This exchange was captured on the El Salvador government's live stream. Trump endorses sending homegrown U.S. prisoners to El Salvador, meaning American citizens to notorious foreign prisons.
People wanted to change their governments, and they wanted to. They love you. They love what you do. You know, I'm not for your support. I want them to do, homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrowns are next. The homegrown's built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right.
He says the homegrown ones are next. You guys built about 5 more spaces. He goes, yeah, we got space. It's not a Twitter video issue. This is not supposed to be live, chat. This is a hot mic. This is a hot mic, okay? This is not, we were not supposed to hear this. Before, as Jonathan Lemire, co-host of Morning Joe, says, this is before the pool entered. This exchange was captured on the El Salvador government's live stream. Trump endorses sending homegrown U.S. prisoners to El Salvador, meaning the American citizens to notorious foreign prisons. And it's not even just a hot mic. I believe this is something that the Trump administration has talked about already. It's something that Bukele has talked about already. So that's it. To be fair, he said it before. He said it shortly thereafter in the press pool too. Yeah. It's not something that they're hiding. Here's a question. Are you deporting Are you considered deporting American citizens to El Salvador? Trump says, yeah, that includes them. You think they're a special type of people or something?
Open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S.
People on Twitter are already defending it. We're so fucking cooked. Yeah. I mean, they're Nazis. There's not really anything else I can say about that. That's it. It's here. It's happening. They're fucking fascists. They're really horny for this kind of violence. They don't really consider that this kind of violence may actually impact them in the long run. I don't know. This is every single day that goes by. Like, I joke about it being Burger Reich or whatever, but like, it's not really a joke. These guys are actually straightforward, blood-curdling fascists. They are baying for blood. They want it. They're excited at the prospect for this kind of structure to become legally calcified. They want to test the boundaries. They're testing the boundaries right now in terms of like what they can get away with. They've already eradicated any sort of mechanism of pushback. There's not a lot of work you can get. Like, one of the most important and yet like somewhat quiet actions that the Trump administration took was against law firms. Okay. And we obviously covered it here, but there wasn't like that much anger or resentment towards this, partially because it's like there's outrage fatigue. It's impossible to pay attention to all the things that they're doing. But the reason why it was very significant, the reason why Donald Trump's attacks against law firms was very significant is because they basically came in and said, if you don't do pro bono work for us, we won't let you into federal buildings. And if you can't go into a federal building, you can't practice law. Like, you can't talk to your clients. Like, they basically said, you have to, you can't go against us. There are very few law firms that are still capable or interested in fighting back against them, against this government. Please stop. I don't care about the CCOT facility thing right now, okay? I know. This is like...
I just saw this video.
Are these bodies and blood? I know. It's just the CCOT facility. Does it have bodies and blood? Is that what it is? Once again, eyes on the prize here. You guys always hyper-focus. Liberals have this fundamental inability to understand larger schemes that are happening in broad daylight, where they have to focus on like some kind of conspiratorial aspect to all of this, okay? Please stop. Lock in. I don't even know if that is real. I don't even know if they're just like fucking killing people, assassinating them, and just like dumping them into a mass grave in the way that people are talking about. But I do know that they are doing horrifying torture. We know that already. We've seen it. It's not like they're hiding that part of it. Bro, pay attention on taxes on USA law firms. Regular folk don't know the importance. Anyway. but why send criminals to another country? I thought our prisons were for profit and want as many as possible. I think that the CCOT alignment is going to work where Eric Prince, from what I've read, Eric Prince Academy, right? Like private mercenaries are going to take over some of the logistics from the Department of Homeland Security. That's number one. Number two, they're most likely going to do a joint partnership with American corporations, I suspect, like American private prison corporations, where they can open up these facilities or manage these facilities, these concentration camps, for pennies on the dollar, as opposed to having them operate on U.S. soil, where there are at least some kind of constitutional hurdles that they have to avoid. So I suspect that they will utilize they'll utilize El Salvador, purchase the land, engage in a land lease agreement with the Salvadoran government, and it will still be like, American private prison corporations will make money off of this, I suspect. By sending them to another country, it becomes foreign policy too. That's what Trump has started saying. Yeah. There's a bunch of reasons as to why sending them to El Salvador is a benefit for a fascist administration like this, and we're seeing it. One of the benefits from their perspective is, well, we can't return them, even when the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, says you have to return this person. You were not supposed to send this person. This person is an active withdrawal, as in due process kicked in. He went through the court system. The American government literally cleared this Maryland resident cleared a higher standard of proof to get a withdrawal to El Salvador, as in the asylum application beyond that is easier to prove. It is harder to prove a withdrawal to El Salvador than it is to get an asylum application through. Okay? That's precisely the reason why the Supreme Court gave a unanimous decision on the facilitation of the return of this, or withdrawal, withholding, sorry. Thank you, Jay Mershon. Like, there are different mechanisms to defend yourself against, like, deportation. A withholding of removal to El Salvador, which is where he's from, is a de facto harder to prove in courts than getting an asylum application done. And it means de facto that, like, you're not supposed to remove this person. You're not supposed to deport this person. Or even if this person was to, I don't know, do something heinous, right? Like a deportable crime, they would not be able to deport him to El Salvador. They would deport him somewhere else. But this person never did that, for the record. He's not a part of any gang. He has, as far as I understand, there's no crime that he's committed. And yet, the actual crime that was committed in this process was done by the government, which then admitted to the wrongdoing. Anyway, let's continue with this, and then we'll do...
U.S. citizens fully naturalized American.
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What do you think? There's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have...
With a simple administrative error, the U.S. now has wholesale SCOTUS approval to illegally detain and deport any U.S. citizen that they want. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far, but... yeah, Donald Trump is now entertaining the notion of kidnapping, blackbagging, and shipping off American, natural-born U.S. citizens to a different country. This is new. This is new territory. A lot of the stuff that they're doing is new territory, for the record. Straw man argument too strong. It's not even a straw man. There is no straw man that he's engaging in. He just like made up a couple cases that are gruesome in his mind and said, yeah, we're going to ship those guys off to El Salvador. Okay, we're going to ship those guys off to the El Salvador torture slave facility. Aaron Rupar spread propaganda against Bangladesh. Why are you following him? I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, but follow policing Aaron Rupar is pretty funny. Yeah, he just is a compiler of all these clips. Yes. I didn't even know that was a thing that he had done, but that's pretty funny. I don't agree with Aaron Rupar. I follow him because he does this. He clips stuff. That's all he's good for.
You said that if
aren't people just going to revolt if this admin goes full fascist like this? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. Especially on this stuff. On the deportation stuff, I think a lot of people are utterly oblivious. They are utterly oblivious to the actions that this administration is taking. And I think on the Israel stuff, on the deportation stuff, which goes hand in hand, it is far more consequential than the fucking trade wars, okay? And this isn't to say that, like, the tariffs and the exemptions are not consequential. It's far more consequential than the Doge cuts, which isn't to say that those Doge cuts aren't consequential. But this, ironically enough, this thing that not enough people are paying attention to is far more significant for our future. Because the reality of the matter is, you do the Doge cuts, people revolt, okay? People rise up. Let's say they fire every federal employee, right? And then the people go, what the fuck are you doing? You just fired every single person. How dare you? You start protesting in the street. His administration comes in and black bags key leadership in those protests, and they ship him off to El Salvador. Boom. All of a sudden, there's nothing. You can't do anything. There's no free speech anymore at this point. There's no due process anymore at this point. And when you get deported to the CCOD facility, you have no way of return. So it doesn't even matter. It is one of due process and First Amendment rights are the most consequential remaining the most consequential remaining protections that we have that they are actively destroying. And ironically, the sad state of affairs is that many of these people are either completely oblivious to this stuff. I've been ringing the alarm bells on this for quite a while now. And I think that most Americans are completely either A, oblivious to this shit, or B, perhaps even worse than being oblivious, the ones who are knowledgeable about what's going on here are in support of it. They are championing it. It's a truly terrifying predicament.
If the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning?
Yeah. You said this. You said that if SCOTUS says someone needed to be returned, you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. Why don't you say, isn't it wonderful we're keeping criminals out of the country? Like, that's his reaction to this. Is you are in violation of the Supreme Court orders. Here, we'll just watch the full thing. But basically, the question is, Mr. President, you are directly in violation of the Supreme Court orders. What do you have to say about this? And his response is, it's great. It's great that we're keeping terrorists out of this country. By the way, for the record, there is no evidence whatsoever. There's only evidence to the contrary. Okay? Of this wrongly deported U.S. man, this Maryland resident, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. There is no evidence whatsoever that he's in MS-13. There's only evidence to suggest that he is directly in the crosshairs of MS-13. And yet, and this is something that the federal government has also personally acknowledged. And yet they still, on the one hand, say he's MS-13, and then also on the other hand, say there's no way we can bring him back.
With you because you want to stop crime, and so do we. And it's very, very effective. And I want to just say hello to the people of El Salvador and say they have one hell of a president. Okay, and I mean that, and I know him well. I know him as a very young man, Marco, even younger than you. You know, he started pretty young.
He'll always be younger.
Young at heart. But I want to thank you for the great job you're doing. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here in the Oval Office with the President and leader of the free world. We're very happy, and we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. And we actually turned the murder capital of the world, that was the journalists call it, right? Murder capital of the world, into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, you know, if sometimes they say that we imprison thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, you know, like,
That's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
Yes. And in fact, Mr. President, you have 350 million people to liberate. Yes. But to liberate 350 million people, you have to imprison some. You know, that's the way it works, right? You cannot just, you know, free the criminals and think crime is going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change.
Why is he sucking Trump / America's boot? What do you mean? This is the dream for him. Everybody knows that if you want to have a permanent dictatorship till the end of time, you, especially in a Latin American country, you have to be America's dog. That's how you get all the benefits. You get money, you get political support. That's it. This is all. These are all of his wishes being realized in broad daylight in real time. Bukele has been able to generate a lot of goodwill, partially as a consequence of how violent MS-13 was, and how much people were, you know, how much people just could not deal with the impact of MS-13's violence, and basically turned his police apparatus into a gang that is even more powerful than MS-13, partially while collaborating with MS-13, potentially collaborating with MS-13 as well. This is the suspicion that people have.
In the streets, a long way to go because you're just initiating your second term, but it's clear that, you know, with the numbers.
What is this? Oh my God, you guys shit on Bukele way too much. Yeah, he's authoritarian, but you guys don't shit on Xi Jinping like this. Brother, what the fuck are you talking about? What kind of industrial policy has Nayib Bukele implemented in El Salvador? Like, what do you mean? He's just like a straightforward right-wing dipshit fascist. Like, that's it. His claim to fame here is basically building slave labor prisons and holding people unjustifiably in said slave labor prisons, like no due process whatsoever. Virtually every single humanitarian organization has been writing extensively about the CCOT facility and how horrifying it is. I think the the horrifying aspect of CCOT in and of itself is obvious to everyone, right? You either get put into the slammer where you have no daylight, you don't see any light whatsoever, you're in pitch black darkness, isolated from everybody else, or when you're not, when you're in general population, you're under constant surveillance and constant light where you can't even sleep. Okay, sleep deprivation is the norm in these facilities. But outside of that, you have very little opportunity to speak with the outside world, very little opportunity to speak with your lawyers, and no way to combat an unjustifiable imprisonment. You don't have to sympathize with MS-13 in this process. You have to recognize that, one, these are torture facilities, okay? And two, more importantly than the fact that these are torture facilities, the people that are being put into these torture facilities, it's because Hasan can't relate. He never went when crime was rampant. Oh, yeah. He got rid of crime. I don't know. You think you understand how bad it was? Chatters, please, for the love of Christ and all things holy, listen to my words, okay? I'm explaining why people still believe in Bukele. And I'm also telling you how fucking stupid it is to make the assumption that crime is gone now. It's done in El Salvador. It doesn't exist. When you got the government doing the fucking crime. What will it take for one of your fucking family members to get black-bagged and falsely considered to be MS-13 for you to go, okay, maybe this wasn't the best idea? He imprisoned 2% of the fucking population, dude. What are we talking about? There's already plenty of evidence to show that his police force goes in. Yeah, that's why I said my family's from El Salvador. Yes, dumb fuck. That's why I said, what will it take when one of your family members gets fucking black-bagged and sent to CCOT and you know that they're not a part of MS-13? Well, is that when you will comprehend what is happening? I'm not saying the situation was better in the past. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply stating that the heavy-handed nature of these apprehensions and the lack of due process and the torturous conditions within the facilities implies that the criminal leadership has exchanged hands. It went from MS-13 to fucking Nayib Bukele. Salvadoran that studies violence here. First of all, double fuck Bukele forever and always. And I doubt Kilmer is dead, despite what TikTok believes. And if he is, then it was the state that killed him. People overlooked that in CCOT, rival gangs are incarcerated next to each other. And there has not, to my knowledge, been an issue with that. Instead, the state has been responsible for killing and torturing people. Yeah. There's also suspicion that Bukele himself, in a deal not dissimilar to like previous deals that Mexican leadership have done with the cartels, most likely also cut a separate side deal with MS-13 as well, which is part of the reason why he wanted the American MS-13 leadership that was apprehended to be sent expeditiously to El Salvador before they were able to make public statements about the collaborative nature of MS-13 and Nayib Bukele. I feel like gang unity might arise because of such horrific treatment. I mean, there's not really much you can do. It's a concentration camp. Yeah. This is the size of El Salvador overlaid over Dallas, Texas. Why would we send anyone there besides nefarious reasons? Is Guantanamo, without having to talk to Cuba, it's ideal for Trump? Exactly. You think we don't have facilities to deal with this shit? Of course we do. It's just This way you get to wash your hands over the death camp happening on U.S. soil. Did you not see that I said only the worst are sent to CCOT and the rest focus on rehab? CCOT is the worst? No, you're wrong. You're just, I think you're delusional. You're absolutely wrong. No, it's not the worst of the worst that are sent to CCOT, dumb fuck. What are you talking about? That's the entire problem here. No, it's random people, random street vendors, for example. It's whoever the fuck the police decide is MS-13, and there's no due process. That's kind of the whole problem here happening in America as well. You're just making shit up. No, Nayib Bukele initially wanted to focus on rehabilitation, focus on solving the underlying economic problems where crime manifests. That's true. That is how Nayib Bukele actually rose to power, and then very quickly was like, yeah, fuck all that. They literally grab people for tattoos, even if it's not MS-13 related tattoos. They grab people for being street vendors if they've been threatened by MS-13. It has nothing to do with actual MS-13 gang activity. The idea that it's like the most rugged of the MS-13 criminals that are being shipped into the facility is wrong. And that is just for the Salvadorans. Like, we're not even talking about the people that we've shipped over there. Okay? It's outlined in this article. El Salvador named one of the world's safest countries. At what cost? El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele declared an initial month-long state of emergency in March 2022 due to heightened gang violence and a wave of murders, according to the Human Rights United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. So far, the state of emergency has been renewed 30 times, the latest of which was announced by the Salvadoran Legislative Assembly on October 4th. To date, this tool has allowed 604 days without homicides and the arrest of more than 82,000 people linked to gangs. In addition, it has positioned the country among the safest in the world. The state of emergency suspended several Salvadoran rights and freedoms as per the OAS. 1. Right of assembly, freedom of association, right to be informed of the reasons for detention, inviolability of correspondence and telecommunications. Regardless, the entity does recognize a constant decrease in homicide cases, with the rate per 100,000 people going from 21.2 in 2020 to 4.9 in 2023. Okay? The alleged human rights violations. El Salvador has been called out for massive human rights violations, including thousands of arbitrary detentions and violations of due process, as well as torture and ill treatment, according to Amnesty International. In a report published on December 2023, the organization detailed a rise in systematic detentions, forced disappearances, and instances of torture since the introduction of the state of emergency. There's also suspicion that he most likely did a secret deal with MS-13 The other suspicion also is that the government is not correctly clocking the murders as well. They're just not reporting the murders potentially and the disappearances to artificially lower the fucking murder rate as well. And it's been successful in terms of propaganda. It's been successful. The remaining Salvadoran population that isn't imprisoned love it. They love him and they love this. That's how terrifying the MS-13 crime situation was to begin with. Okay? So you're just going to speculate? No, there is plenty of evidence as to why there is a secret side deal that he... wait, hold on. Hold on 1 second. I just got to do something here. Okay. Washington Post covered it as well. Bukele agreed to accept hundreds of suspected gang members living in the United States. In return, he wanted the U.S. to send him less than a dozen MS-13 gang members in U.S. custody. Why was he so intent on getting the MS-13 guys? Washington Post reports. Some Salvadoran analysts believe Bukele wants the gang leaders back so they won't testify about his government's involvement with them and potentially put him in legal trouble. If these returns of Salvadoran gang members continue, it takes away the possibility that the U.S. judicial system will open a case against Bukele for negotiations and agreements with terrorist groups, said Juan Martinez de Bucion, an anthropologist who has studied the gangs. Bukele has denied making deals with gangs. Such negotiations by his predecessors were highly unpopular domestically. A lot of ultra conservative people and even non-conservative people in El Salvador, like Bukele, they think he is. They think he has been able to put a dent in the crime that MS-13 is engaged in, and to a certain degree, it has been successful. The problem here, however, is not that the incredible torture prison scheme that he has created is horrifying in and of itself. The issue also is that they're grabbing random people off the street with no due process. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, if you become the crime, if the government becomes the MS-13 gang, then yeah, technically there is no crime because it's a fucking police state. Operational autonomy. Just curious, what kind of deal would he make with MS-13? What does MS-13 get? Yeah, this is similar to what narco politics looks like in Mexico as well, as the chatter correctly points out. Operational autonomy and legal immunity in some cases as long as they stay within government boundaries. Don't fuck up the bag too much. Then why are his approval ratings so high? I don't know. Think about the United States of America. The United States of America is an even better analog to this because the rates of crime, specifically violent crime, are nowhere near as high as El Salvador. And yet the people were made to believe that there is like an undocumented migrant crime panic that has taken place in this country, and therefore are totally fine with these sorts of insane, unprecedented schemes that the Trump administration is engaging with right now. It's directly Hitlerian policy. And most people are either A, oblivious to it, or B, the ones who are aware of it are in support of it. So think about how that can happen. Try to analyze how that can happen in a country where there isn't the same level of fucking crime. And then think about what it would look like, how bloodthirsty normal Americans would be like if there was that level of crime as well. The United States Department of State also recognizes the allegations in their El Salvador Human Rights Report in 2023, signaling arbitrary killings, cruel treatment by security forces, harsh and life-threatening prison conditions, and extensive gender-based violence as some of the barriers which have undermined President Bukele's security strategy. The Socorro Judicio Humanitario Foundation, which provides free legal advice to innocent Salvadorans criminalized by the state of emergency, has reported 315 deaths of incarcerated people since the establishment of the measure in 2022. The most prevalent causes of death signaled by the association are violence and lack of medical attention, although unknown causes of death have increased in 2024. These people only had the right to a hearing for the imposition of captivity measures, after which they died under the guardianship of the state. Amnesty International also explained that the widespread pattern of arbitrary arrest targets people from marginalized communities especially, which already suffer from crime and extreme poverty. The conditions that inmates experience within these prisons has also been heavily denounced by human rights organizations. As per the OAS, incarcerated individuals are stripped down to their underwear, placed in small cells where they sleep on the floor, and do not have access to clean water or food. So the torturous conditions are already fucking inhumane and unacceptable. Even when they are torturing MS-13 gang members, by the way, just so you understand, But the major problem here on top of that is that it's not all MS-13 gang members. It's not all rugged criminals. It's just what the state has decided is a fucking rugged criminal. Yeah, Salvadoran here who's been and is going again this year. Reason for Bukele's high popularity is because living conditions have improved. It's just that simple. So they see the improvement and think, well, it's working, and either don't care or see it as necessary. They've fallen for the propaganda. And for the record, we're talking about what's going on in El Salvador, but what's happening in El Salvador is no longer just about El Salvador, because we're sending Americans to this torture facility. Okay? And the reasons as to why we're doing that, the reasons as to why we're sending Americans or, legal permanent residents and potentially Americans down the line to this torture slave camp without due process, with no mechanisms to bring back these people, even if the Supreme Court demands that they bring back these people, is because we want to have an unaccountable torture slave labor colony that is not on U.S. soil, where we can just like ship enemies of the state to.